Have you ever wondered how quietly a life can collapse? Not with shouting, not with slammed doors, but with a single text message sent from a beach in Mexico. That night, I was alone in my kitchen, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound. At 11:06 p.m., a message lit up my phone. It read, "You deserve someone boring. I've found someone who understands me. Don't try to call." Attached was a screenshot. $134,000 transferred out of our joint account into a private wallet I didn't recognize. My name is Mark Hollander. I'm 56 years old, and my wife Alicia was supposed to be attending a luxury wellness mastermind in Tulum. What she didn't know was that while she was planning her escape, I'd been preparing for this moment in silence. Because when you work in cybersecurity for over 2 decades, you learn that betrayal rarely comes all at once. It comes in patterns, small signs, quiet shifts, the kind most people ignore. But I wasn't most people. I just hadn't realized until that night that love, like systems, should always be backed up, in case someone decides to shut you down without warning. And this? This was only the beginning. Alicia and I met at a networking event in downtown Seattle. I was a keynote speaker on data ethics and digital security. She was there to pitch her idea for a luxury wellness retreat brand, a fusion of mindfulness, nutrition, and high-end experiences. I remember her standing at the back of the room, notebook in hand, asking questions not about the tech but about human trust. Her curiosity struck me as rare. I was 49 at the time, recently out of a quiet, mutual divorce, and immersed in my work. Alicia was 37, magnetic, full of energy, and unafraid to take up space. She smiled like she had already seen the future. Our first few months together felt like momentum, sharp, fast, intentional. I helped her refine her business model, suggested scalable revenue streams, even connected her with some of my former clients who were wellness enthusiasts. She moved into my condo 6 months later. I paid the lease on her first retreat house, in Bainbridge. I helped register the domain for her brand, hired a web designer, and took her headshots myself on a rainy Sunday afternoon. She used to joke, "You're my quiet genius. I bring the glow, you keep the lights on." I believed it was affection. Looking back, it was a blueprint. As her business grew, things began to change. Subtly at first. She didn't ask anymore, she informed. A new espresso machine for her, Creative Flow, a high-end juicer, the imported eucalyptus diffuser system, all charged to our shared account. "It's for the brand," she would say. A write-off, technically. I didn't push back, not because I agreed, but because part of me was proud. I wanted her to thrive. I wanted to believe that supporting her meant we were building something together. But love, I've learned, can begin to decay quietly, like a program running a faulty script in the background. Over time, her presence shifted. Mornings used to be tea and planning. Now they were phone calls with partners I never met. Nights were filled with retreat bookings, influencer collaborations, hashtags, and live streams. The woman who once said she didn't care about followers started talking about engagement rates and brand impressions. She began using the phrase abundance mindset a lot, usually after spending money. I noticed her Instagram slowly shift. From nature quotes and yoga poses to shots of her in flowing white linen, golden hour selfies with captions about energy alignment and feminine power. And then Shay Carter appeared. At first, he was just a name she mentioned, a biohacker and conscious business coach she met at an event in Joshua Tree. Then he was tagged in stories, then posts, always smiling, shirtless, arms around her and a group of wellness coaches, sipping smoothies in Bali, Costa Rica, Sedona. I asked her about him once. She laughed. "You're not jealous, are you? He's just someone who gets what this work is about. He's in a different frequency. You wouldn't really understand." I didn't press further. But something in her tone, that detached kindness, masking quiet dismissal, stayed with me. It was the first time I truly realized that the language of connection had been replaced with one of performance. Still, I tried. I told myself relationships evolve. That love, like any system, needed updates. But when I brought up our finances, suggested we review the books, discuss boundaries, she smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "Mark, you're overthinking. Let it flow." But I wasn't overthinking. I was calculating, watching, tracking, because what she didn't know was that I had already begun to separate our systems, legally and digitally. What she saw as my emotional distance was actually a form of quiet engineering. While she built a brand based on curated spirituality and external validation, I started encrypting my future, not out of fear, but out of instinct. Because when someone starts treating your love like a funding source, you learn quickly that survival isn't about confrontation, it's about preparation. The first true fracture came in silence. It was early autumn when Alicia returned from a restorative leadership retreat in Sedona. She didn't kiss me hello, just dropped her suitcase by the door and walked straight into the bathroom. I watched her from the kitchen, her profile reflected in the hallway mirror. Her face looked different, not just tired, but distant. Something had shifted, and not in a way she planned to discuss. Over the following weeks, her behavior grew more erratic. Longer absences, vague stories, unexplained withdrawals from our accounts. I didn't question her directly, not yet. I just started documenting everything. Dates, amounts, passwords. I created a private spreadsheet and backed it up to a secure server. One afternoon, she left her tablet on the counter while she ran out to a meeting. I didn't snoop. I didn't need to. Notifications kept popping up. I saw his name, Shay, over and over again. Calendar invites. A payment confirmation for a flight to Tulum. A note titled, "Expansion Plan, Shay and A." The worst part? It was saved in a shared Google folder she hadn't even bothered to hide. When she got home, I was sitting at the kitchen table. I asked her plainly, "Is there something you need to tell me?" She didn't flinch, didn't even pause to consider the question. "Mark," she said, pouring herself a glass of water, "you've been so consumed with your work. I've had to grow in ways you can't support. I found a community that sees me, lifts me. It's not about betrayal. It's about alignment." That word again, alignment. I nodded, pretending to understand. But in my mind, I was scanning the last year for every missed sign I had excused as stress, growth, or artistic temperament. Her birthday trip to Costa Rica that became a solo reset. The surprise $9,000 investment into a retreat property in Ojai. The late-night Zoom calls with mentors who always seemed male and unnamed. I wasn't hurt, not in the traditional sense. I was disturbed by how calculated it had all been, how she had constructed a narrative of spiritual liberation while siphoning resources from the very life we built together. A few days later, I confirmed my suspicions. I hired a quiet private investigator, a digital intelligence analyst I'd worked with on corporate breach cases. Within 72 hours, he sent me a portfolio, photos, transaction maps, business links. Alicia and Shay had opened a shell LLC together 4 months ago. Holos Human, registered to an address in Arizona, one I'd never heard of. My name was not on it, but our money had been moving through it. They had applied for a wellness grant in my name. I hadn't authorized anything. I sat in my home office that night staring at the walls, not angry, not heartbroken, just aware. There's something surreal about realizing your partner has been planning a future without you, using your identity to build it. I looked at our wedding photo, still framed above the bookshelves, a relic now, an artifact from a version of my life that had quietly been overwritten, file by file, moment by moment. Alicia had once whispered that I was her grounding force, her safe harbor. And yet, when it came time to leave, she didn't even warn the lighthouse. She packed up everything, emotionally and financially, while still kissing me goodnight and calling me her rock. But I wasn't a rock anymore. I was a firewall, and the more I dug, the more her story unraveled. The Shell LLC was in the process of acquiring property using our marital assets as proof of liquidity. Shay had been using her to secure business loans, using forged documents, AI-generated pay stubs, even social media metrics to inflate his value. It wasn't just emotional betrayal now, it was a coordinated financial scheme. I called my lawyer. "This may no longer be a domestic matter," I said. "We're entering federal territory." He told me to keep documenting, to stay quiet, to gather everything before we made a move. But that night, as Alicia posted a glowing reel from Tulum, ocean in the background captioned, "Rising with the ones who match your vibration," I opened my encrypted folder, uploaded every file I had, and renamed it one word: proof. Because betrayal doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens every time you convince yourself to look away. Every time you pretend the red flag is just a warning light, not a wall already crumbling behind you. And I was done pretending. The night after I renamed the folder Proof, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with the lights off, the sound of Seattle rain tapping against the windows, and my laptop glowing softly on the coffee table. My hands moved automatically. Years of habit ingrained from dealing with data breaches, leaks, and corporate sabotage. Only this time, it was personal. The systems I had designed to protect others were now quietly encasing my own life like armor. First, I remotely deactivated all shared financial access points, joint checking, credit lines, digital wallets, locked. Then I encrypted my retirement accounts and revoked Alicia's power of attorney, which she didn't even know she had through an outdated document we'd signed for estate planning 5 years ago. It had been symbolic then. Now, it was a liability. By 3 a.m., I had filed for a fraud alert with all 3 credit bureaus in my name. At 3:30, I forwarded a preliminary affidavit to my attorney detailing the movement of funds to Hollows Human LLC. At 4, I activated Contingency Alpha, a multi-step plan I'd quietly built 2 years earlier, not because I expected betrayal, but because I understood risk. The first part of that contingency involved a legal firewall, a hidden trust I'd established for my digital assets, IP rights, and consulting retainers. Alicia didn't even know the trust existed, let alone that it held rights to nearly all the back-end code she once thought was just Mark's tech stuff. The second part was psychological. I needed to act like nothing had changed. When Alicia returned from Tulum 2 days later, she walked in like she had just come back from brunch, sun-kissed, energized, smiling like someone who had already mentally detached herself from any consequence. She kissed my cheek. "You look tired." "I didn't sleep well," I replied, sipping coffee. "Too much screen time," she said with a wink. "You should come on the next retreat. You'd love it. We're launching a digital detox program with Shay." I nodded, as if I were considering it, as if the man she'd been building a life with behind my back hadn't become a subject of my personal investigation. As if I didn't already know that Shay's entire online persona was a curated facade, rented Lamborghinis, fake testimonials, manipulated before and after client photos. Half of his brand was built using AI, and the other half through fraud. I played along for a week, smiled, cooked dinner, let her use our joint card one more time, just to trace the digital fingerprint. Each transaction told a story. A massage at a 5-star spa in Tulum, an herbal cleanse kit from a bioenergetic company Shay was quietly funneling money into. Wire transfer labeled brand expansion. Meanwhile, my systems were logging everything: IP addresses, login times, device IDs. Data doesn't lie and it doesn't forget. Then she made her move. One Thursday night, just past midnight, my phone lit up with a message. "You deserve someone boring. I found someone who understands me. Don't try to call." Attached, a screenshot of a $134,000 transfer from our joint account to a crypto wallet. The money was gone, or so she thought. What she didn't know was that hours earlier I'd already flagged that account with my bank's cybersecurity division and attached evidence of probable fraud. The transfer had been preemptively marked for investigation. I wasn't just watching, I was already acting. I typed only 2 words in response: "Transaction pending." She didn't reply. Instead, a call came in from an unknown number, one of Shay's burner phones, according to my tracker. I declined it. I called my attorney next. She's moved the money, I said. Then we move faster, he replied. By 10 a.m. the next morning, I had filed for emergency asset protection and submitted documents proving that Holos Human LLC was built with marital funds and my digital identity. And just like that, the game changed. Alicia, who had spent months curating her escape with poetic captions and filtered freedom, now found herself frozen, literally. The accounts she thought were emptied had been reversed. The crypto wallet was flagged. The LLC was under audit. The shell company was exposed. She tried calling, messaging, emailing, but I was done explaining. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't seek revenge. I simply removed her access. Access to my money, my future, my name. In the world I live in, trust is a security protocol. Once it's breached, you don't patch it. You isolate the system, and then you shut it down. The next morning, after finalizing the freeze on our assets, I took a quiet walk through Pike Place Market. I wasn't hungry, but I needed to breathe. For years, Alicia had made me feel like I was too rigid, too obsessed with systems, too closed off to flow. But as I passed vendors unpacking crates of vegetables and street performers tuning guitars, I realized something. It wasn't that I was closed. It's that I had been clear, and she had mistaken clarity for control. By mid-afternoon, my attorney called. Her voice was tight, precise. "Mark," she said, "we've just completed a preliminary review of the Holos Human filings. There's something you need to see." She forwarded a document, a lease agreement for a luxury retreat space in Moab, Utah, co-signed by Alicia Hollander and Shay Carter. Nothing shocking there, until I saw the line that read, "Collateral, marital property, digital and financial, assets owned by M. Hollander." My name, my security, my life leveraged without my knowledge, and that was only the surface. We dug deeper. Another file revealed a $75,000 equipment financing loan, new age biometric machines and neurofeedback pods Alicia had posted in stories from her retreats. I'd assumed they were rentals. They weren't. They were financed under a business line of credit, again tied to me via an advisory capacity signature that I never gave. I examined the signature closely. It wasn't forged with a pen. It was created digitally, convincingly, but not enough to fool me. The curves of the H, the slant of the M. It was AI generated, pulled from dozens of documents Alicia had easy access to. The technology was good but not perfect. She hadn't counted on the fact that I would notice. I called my brother Ethan, a software engineer and digital forensics specialist, who now worked with a tech crime unit on the East Coast. "I need you," I said, "and I need you fast." We set up a secure call. I forwarded the files, the metadata, the timestamps. 30 minutes in, he whistled. "She's been busy," he said, "but she's sloppy." "How so?" "These documents? They weren't just generated. They were traced from actual files on your shared drive. She exported old contracts, layered your digital signature, and modified the body content. There's a fingerprint, and it's messy." We worked through the evening, tracing each document. Some were tied to additional loan applications. One, and this was the kicker, was part of a failed attempt to apply for a business grant for underrepresented tech founders. In my name, with Alicia listed as creative co-CEO. My attorney contacted the Washington State Financial Crimes Division. By morning, a formal complaint had been drafted, supported by a detailed forensic report prepared by Ethan. The charges weren't just personal anymore. They fell under digital identity theft, fraudulent misrepresentation, and potentially wire fraud due to interstate activity. But what truly sealed the trap was what we found next. Shay Carter had applied for a high-risk merchant loan using inflated revenue statements generated from fake client testimonials Alicia had filmed at her retreats. Some of the people featured weren't even clients. They were models hired from gig platforms, reading scripts. The videos were hosted on a private YouTube playlist linked to their pitch deck. And then there was the email. Ethan recovered it from Shay's metadata history, an email between Shay and a finance partner titled, "Let's use Mark's signature while we still can." Attached, a loan contract, ready for submission. I stared at that subject line for a long time. Not because I was surprised, but because it confirmed what I had refused to believe for months. This wasn't confusion. It wasn't spiritual misalignment. It was theft. Coordinated, intentional, and deeply stupid. By the end of the week, Alicia's and Shay's business accounts were flagged. The merchant lender revoked funding. The Utah retreat space backed out of the lease due to pending fraud concerns. And yet, in the middle of it all, Alicia posted a story from Tulum, a golden beach. Her silhouette against the horizon, captioned, "Sometimes to rise you must let go of the weight others want you to carry." It was poetic. I'll give her that. But what she didn't know was that while she was rising into the sun, the ground beneath her had already been pulled away, and soon she would fall into the trap she had built with her own hands, using my name as scaffolding. 2 days after the email discovery, Alicia showed up at my office unannounced. I had just finished a call with my attorney when the receptionist buzzed, in her voice hushed but firm. "She's here," she said. "She won't leave." I took a breath, stood up slowly, and walked out to the lobby. Alicia was pacing in front of the glass windows, her usual grace replaced with a nervous energy that didn't match her flowing white linen outfit and carefully curated presence. Her smile flickered when she saw me, bright, forced, full of the same charm she used on her social media followers, but this wasn't Instagram, and I wasn't her audience anymore. "Mark," she said, loud enough for those around us to hear, "there's been a massive misunderstanding. We need to talk." I nodded toward the hallway. Privately, she followed me into a small conference room. I closed the door and didn't offer her a seat. "I'm assuming this is about the accounts," I said. She sat anyway, crossing her legs, still holding the performance. "The bank froze everything. The Hollows project is stalled. We can't access funds for the lease." "You forged my signature," I interrupted calmly. "You leveraged our marital property to fund your business partner's debts, and you used AI to create documents in my name." Her lips parted. The words caught, somewhere between denial and panic. "I didn't. I have the metadata, Alicia," I said. "I have the IP addresses, timestamps, edit logs, even screen recordings of you using old contracts as templates. You were sloppy." Her hands clenched in her lap. "I never meant for it to go this far." Shay said, "Shay's being investigated by federal authorities. Your emails are part of the case now." She stared at me, the reality crashing into her face like a wave she never expected. "They're investigating me?" "No," I said coldly. "They're investigating Hollows Human LLC, which you co-founded, and your digital behavior suggests you knowingly participated in a pattern of financial misrepresentation." For a moment, she said nothing. The silence stretched between us like the years we'd spent trying to hold something together that had already come undone. And then, as I'd predicted, she shifted gears. "Mark," she said softly, "this doesn't have to be like this. We were partners. We loved each other. Maybe we lost our way, but we can still talk about this. Come home. We can clean this up together." I looked at her, really looked at her, and I realized in that moment that she still thought she had leverage, that I would cave, that I would protect her one more time. "There is no home," I said. "There's only discovery, depositions, court dates. You made those choices." Her eyes glistened with something, anger, maybe fear. "You're destroying me," she whispered. "No," I said. "You did that yourself." She stood, fast and trembling. "Do you know what this will do to me? To my reputation, to Shay?" I raised an eyebrow. "I'm sure he'll make a very convincing victim in his next keynote speech." She left without another word, her heels echoing down the corridor like the closing bell of a long-dead partnership. That evening, I received a message from Shay himself. It was a voice memo, dramatic, slow, full of pseudo-philosophy. "You could, have just walked away, Mark. But now you've escalated things. Alicia was trying to heal. You're making this ugly. I saved the message and forwarded it to my attorney. He's trying to intimidate you, she said. Classic narcissistic tactic. We'll add it to the file. The next morning I showed up at Shay's Gym, the flagship location in downtown Portland, sleek and glass-walled with motivational slogans stenciled across every surface. I didn't come for confrontation. I came to deliver a folder. He met me in the lobby, shirt tight across his chest, tan too perfect to be natural. You must be Mark, he said, smiling like he was about to sell me a product. Alicia said you might stop by. I didn't shake his hand. Let's talk somewhere private. He led me into a minimalist office space, white leather couch framed quote on the wall. You're only trapped by the beliefs you refuse to challenge. I placed the folder on his desk and said, nothing. He opened it, flipped through the first few pages, slowed on the fourth. These are all legitimate, he said defensively. They were, I replied, until you used stolen identity data to secure funding. He looked up. We never save it. Your name, your LLC, your email trail. I'm not here to negotiate, I'm here to inform. Every bank that backed you will be receiving copies of this folder by tomorrow. And your equipment lease? It's void the moment Alicia's collateral is invalidated, which it now is. His expression changed. The confidence cracked. You're bluffing. I smiled. Try me. And then I walked out, calmly, with the certainty of a man who had finally stepped out of the shadows and into the clarity of consequence. The courtroom was quiet, too quiet for what was about to unfold. I sat at one end of the long oak conference table beside my attorney, a woman named Rachel Burnham, calm and sharp as a scalpel. Across from us sat Alicia and her newly retained legal counsel, a polished man in his early 30s who looked like he still believed charm could solve everything. But the tension in Alicia's posture betrayed her. Her hands were tightly clasped on the table, her shoulders high and stiff, like she was bracing for a wave she couldn't stop. This was our court-ordered mediation, an attempt to settle financial matters before the fraud allegations became a criminal case. I wasn't here to negotiate from weakness. I was here because we had something they didn't, undeniable evidence. Her attorney cleared his throat first. My client is open to a fair and balanced division of marital assets. Despite recent misunderstandings, she is willing to be reasonable in exchange for a swift and private resolution. Rachel gave a patient nod, then slid a folder across the table. That's excellent, she said, because we've just received a final report from the digital forensics unit in Olympia. Alicia's eyes flicked to the folder before her attorney picked it up. He skimmed the first few pages, then paused, blinking hard. These documents, these signatures, they were generated using AI synthesis, Rachel explained, trained on samples of my client's authentic signatures. Your client used a modified algorithm, accessed through a third-party signing software account linked to her email. The IP address traces back to her Tulum Airbnb. I never, Alicia began, her voice sharp. Rachel raised a hand gently, still composed. Before you speak, Ms. Hollander, you should know that this evidence has already been submitted to the district attorney's office for review. Her attorney froze. You've gone to the DA? We didn't, I said. The banks did. That was the moment Alicia truly unraveled. Her poise collapsed like scaffolding under too much weight. This was supposed to be a clean break, she hissed, turning to me. We were supposed to part peacefully. You don't get to weaponize my identity, drain our accounts, and walk away with a beach quote and a smoothie, I replied, my voice even. This isn't karma, it's consequence. Rachel slid another document across the table. This is a proposed settlement agreement. If Ms. Hollander signs today, my client is prepared to submit a letter to the DA confirming his intention not to press separate charges for the theft of personal property or for the unauthorized wire transfers. In return, your client waives any claim to Mark's financial holdings, assumes full liability for all Hollow's human debts, and forfeits any rights to alimony. The lawyer blinked. This is aggressive. It's generous, Rachel said smoothly. It keeps your client out of criminal court, for now. Alicia stared down at the paper, mouth tight. She had come in expecting negotiation, maybe even sympathy. Instead, she found legal architecture she couldn't climb through. Because I hadn't acted out of anger. I had acted out of design. Fine, she whispered finally. I'll sign. As the pen scratched across the paper, I didn't feel triumph. I felt clarity, the kind of weightless certainty that comes only after you've done what was necessary, not what was easy. But the fallout wasn't done. 3 days later, I received an email from a financial institution in Salt Lake City. It was brief. Following recent fraud investigations, all remaining Hollows human accounts have been suspended. Commercial lenders have initiated repossession processes. Shay, it seemed, had vanished from social media entirely. His flagship gym in Portland was shuttered overnight. Lights off, signage removed, profiles deleted. No farewell post, no public explanation. Just gone. Alicia, I later learned through quiet channels, moved to Arizona to start over, launching a smaller, quieter retreat brand under a new name. But the shadow followed her. Whispers of legal trouble, investment complications, a name that couldn't be scrubbed from court filings no matter how many times she changed her Instagram bio. For Guy, Weeks' mutual friends messaged me, some with sympathy, others with confusion. You're really not going after her for more. You could ruin her. You're letting her off easy. But they didn't understand. This was never about revenge. It was about boundaries. It was about stopping a pattern from consuming any more of my life. She thought I would fall apart. But I didn't, because while she was busy crafting a false narrative online, I was busy documenting the truth, and in the end, the truth didn't scream. It just stood quietly and watched everything else collapse. The day after the settlement was finalized, I packed a single suitcase, closed the door to my condo for the last time, and drove north. I didn't have a clear destination, just a compass heading and a craving for silence. The city, once my fortress of logic and routine, now felt like a space Alicia's voice still echoed in. The scent of her candles in the hallway, the vision board she never took down, the herb jars labeled in cursive. I didn't want to erase her memory. I just didn't want to inhale it anymore. I ended up in Port Townsend, a small coastal town 2 hours from Seattle, where the wind feels older and the streets still hum with wooden porches, rusted mailboxes, and the sound of gulls. I rented a modest house near the marina, nothing flashy, just good bones and a fireplace that took effort to light. That first week, I didn't touch my laptop. I didn't open any news. I sat with a notepad, walked twice a day, and drank black, coffee on the porch in the early mornings, watching fishermen roll out into the fog like ghosts chasing their purpose. No phones rang. No screens lit up. No one asked me for access to anything. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel needed. I felt free. Some people equate freedom with starting over. New cities, new faces, new names. For me, it wasn't about reinvention. It was about integration, taking the shattered pieces of what had happened and choosing not to hide them but to learn how to live with them. I joined a community woodworking group. Nothing official. Just older men meeting twice a week in a shed by the pier, fixing broken benches or building birdhouses. Nobody asked me about my job. Nobody brought up betrayal. We just measured, cut, sanded, and told stories about fishing, trips that may or may not have happened. One of them, a retired Marine named Russ, asked me if I was married. I used to be, I said. He nodded, handing me a hammer. Then you know what freedom costs. I smiled. It was a strange comfort, being around people who didn't need details to understand the weight behind your silences. 2 weeks later, I started volunteering part-time at a nonprofit that provided digital safety training for older adults, teaching them how to recognize phishing scams, protect their passwords, secure their online banking. It wasn't glamorous, but it mattered. And maybe, in some small way, it helped keep someone else from experiencing what I had. By the end of the month, I had launched a project I'd been sketching quietly in the back of my mind during those last exhausting years of my marriage. AI, digital support platform for men navigating high-stakes divorces, especially those involving financial abuse or identity manipulation. I called it the Comeback Protocol, not because it promised revenge or redemption, but because it offered tools, clarity, and a path forward. I didn't advertise it. I didn't post about it. I just made it available for the man sitting alone in his kitchen, phone buzzing with betrayal, unsure what to do next. Somewhere out there, I knew Alicia was rebuilding too. Her new brand had resurfaced under a different name. The color scheme changed. The captions were more cautious, the claims less extravagant. She had learned her lesson, but not the one I had hoped. She learned how to be more careful, not more honest. But that wasn't my battle anymore. I'd fought mine, and I had won. Not by destroying her, but by saving myself. Because peace doesn't come from proving someone wrong. It comes from no longer needing to. And in Port Townsend, with the ocean wind in my face and my name no longer held hostage by someone else's ambition, I finally understood what that meant. Freedom isn't loud. Freedom is the sound of a locked door you no longer have to check twice. This story wasn't just about fraud. It was about trust, the quiet, unseen kind built over years. And what happens when that trust is weaponized? Mark Hollander didn't yell. He didn't retaliate with rage. He responded with clarity, planning, and a calm rooted in self-respect. That's the core of true masculinity. Not domination, but direction. Not chaos, but control. Too often, men are conditioned to tolerate silence, to absorb betrayal quietly. But silence without boundaries becomes complicity. What Mark shows us is that it's possible to be both dignified and decisive, to protect yourself without becoming bitter, to enforce justice without becoming vengeful. If you've ever been through something like this, or if you're navigating betrayal right now, remember, you don't need to prove your worth to anyone who underestimated it. Just live in a way that reclaims it, fully and unapologetically. Comment below. Have you ever had to walk away from someone who mistook your loyalty for weakness? Your story might help another man take his first step toward clarity. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more powerful stories about strength, justice, and starting over.